I just know you're ready to hear about a little crime. Welcome to Crime Daddies.
Warning, this podcast is hosted by two true crime dads that will talk about murder, drugs, rape, and offenses against children. We may crack jokes and make light of something so terrible that has happened, but it will never be about the victim or the victim's family. You have been warned.
Welcome back, everybody, to Crime Daddies. My name is Jacob.
And I am Hunter.
And we want to thank you guys so much for tuning in for another episode. And thanks for listening to all the episodes previously. And just to remind you guys, if you don't mind, whenever you listen, to follow us on whatever platform you're listening on and interact in some way. But I'm not going to get off on too much of a tangent because I think Hunter has a pretty big case to tell us today. Is that right?
That is right. And today I'm going to be bringing you, in my opinion, is the biggest case out of SEMO.
Give it to me, dude. What is it?
Today we're going to be talking about Michelle Lawless.
There's going to be a lot of people that have a lot of feelings about this one.
Absolutely. Like I said, it is, in my opinion, the biggest case out of SEMO. Everybody's heard of it. Everybody has their own opinions. It's been covered on major news medias. It's been covered on major podcasts. So I initially was hesitant to even do this episode, but since it was suggested to us so much, I decided to do literally, 20 hours of research on it just to try and make it the best I could.
And whenever he says suggested a lot, we're talking countless DMs and messages.
So we're listening to all of you, and we want to bring you the content that you want to hear. So without further ado, Jacob, let's talk about Benton, Missouri. Benton, Missouri is the county seat of Scott County, located in southeast Missouri, with a population of 911 as of 2024. It is a small city known for being the administrative center for its county, with a history and local government that serves the surrounding area. It was founded in 1822 by Captain William Myers and named after Thomas Hart Benton, Missouri's first U.S. Senator. Households in Benton earn a median yearly income of $90,822. 43.58% of the households earn more than the national average each year. Household expenditures also average $104,226 per year. From 2023 to 2024, employment in Benton, Missouri grew at a rate of 1.58% from 380 employees to 386 employees. The most common employment sectors for those who live in Benton, Missouri are educational services, which make up 58 people, healthcare and social assistance, which make up 43 people, and manufacturing, which make up 41 people. All right, everybody, let's go back to the year 1992 before Jacob and I were even a thought. In 1992, major events included the LA riots following the Rodney King verdict, Bill Clinton defeating George H.W. Bush in the U.S. presidential election, the Maastricht Treaty paved the way for the European Union, and the Earth Summit was held in Rio. The first book on AI, The Age of Intelligent Machines, was published forecasting the Internet's popularity. The 25th Olympic Games were held in Barcelona, Spain. The popular TV character Barney debuted. Popular releases included Aladdin, Sister Act, and The Bodyguard. And also that same year, serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer was found guilty. So 1992 seemed to be an important year for the history books.
That's a really big year. There's a lot of stuff that happened. I didn't even know that all happened all in that same year. I mean, those are a lot of important things. Across, you talked about sports, you talked about media, you talked about politics, all at once. It's pretty nuts.
Michelle Lawless was born on Thursday, August 2nd, 1973, into a close-knit family that included her parents, Esther and Marvin, along with her siblings Jason and Valerie. She spent her life in the Benton area and at the time of her death was a freshman nursing student at Southeast Missouri State University located north of Benton near East Cape Girardeau. She had an active and community-oriented upbringing in her younger years. She participated in Girl Scouts and later volunteered as a candy striper at a local hospital in Cape Girardeau, where she also took part in charity events alongside activities at her local Unity Church. A candy striper is a teenage volunteer, traditionally young women who worked in U.S. hospitals from the 1940s to the 1990s, named for the red and white striped pinafores they wore. They provide a non-clinical support to nurses and patients such as delivering meds, mail, and flowers, or reading to patients. She attended Thomas Kelly High School about 6 miles outside of Benton along Route 77, graduating in 1991. During her time there, she is believed to have been a cheerleader for the school's basketball team. Physically, she was small, standing around 5 feet tall and weighing roughly 95 pounds, but she was known to be capable of defending herself if necessary. She held a green belt in karate and was not easily intimidated. By all accounts, she had no known enemies or troubled relationships that might explain the events that led to her death. On Sunday, November 8, 1992, events unfolded along a quiet exit ramp off Interstate 55 just east of Benton. That morning, a couple, Jerry and Ruth Householder, arrived at the sheriff's office to report a car parked on the northbound exit ramp with its engine running and headlights still on. They had approached the vehicle, but feeling uneasy, chose instead to alert authorities. Reserve Deputy Rick Walter and Officer Roy Moore responded to the report and arrived at approximately 1:29 a.m. They found a 1986 Buick Somerset at the top of the ramp. Initially, nothing seemed unusual, but when Officer Moore opened a driver's side door and Deputy Walter shined a flashlight inside, they discovered a young woman slumped over the center console. Her head rested near the passenger seat and she was covered in blood. It was immediately clear that she was not unconscious but deceased, and that the situation likely involved foul play. Blood was visible not only inside the vehicle but also scattered across the ramp. Stains were found on a nearby guardrail and down an embankment, suggesting the incident extended beyond the car. The victim was barefoot with mud and grass on her socks, indicating that she had been outside the vehicle at some point. Her purse was found under the passenger seat, undisturbed, and her rings were located in the center console beneath her body. These details suggested that robbery was not a motive. Additionally, the passenger door was locked, and both doors appeared closed when the officers arrived. As more officers and emergency personnel reached the scene, it became evident that Miss Lawless had died shortly only before being discovered. Blood patterns indicated movement between the embankment and the vehicle, pointing to a violent sequence of events. Investigators later determined she had been beaten and shot 3 times at close range, once in the face, once in the back of the head, and once in the back. Shell casings from a .380 caliber handgun were found inside the car.
So overkill, pretty much. They did overkill.
Yeah, absolutely. They were wanting to make sure that she was dead. The autopsy revealed defensive wounds on her arms and hands, along with biological material under her fingernails that did not belong to her. This strongly indicated she fought her attacker. Based on the evidence, investigators theorized that she may have been forced to stop at the exit ramp, possibly by another vehicle. A confrontation likely occurred, escalating into violence. It appears she was removed from her car, either forcibly or while attempting to escape, and made her way toward the embankment. There, she was severely beaten before being returned to the vehicle, where she was ultimately shot. Despite the brutality of the attack, there are no signs of robbery or sexual assault, suggesting the crime may have been personal in nature. Witness accounts added further complexity. A man driving a small white car approached the scene shortly after the discovery, asking for directions to a gas station before leaving. Another witness, Mark Abbott, claimed to have seen the victim earlier and provided multiple inconsistent statements about what he had observed, including descriptions of other individuals and vehicles near the scene. His changing accounts raised questions about his reliability. Additionally, a motorcyclist named Dallas Butler reported seeing a young woman in a parked car at the exit ramp around 1 a.m., appearing uninjured at the time, with a man standing nearby. This sighting suggests the attack occurred shortly afterward. Miss Lawless's boyfriend, Leon Lamb, stated that she had visited him earlier that night and left around 1 a.m. He claimed they parted on good terms after having sex that night, though her personal writings indicated a complicated relationship. Overall, the case presents a troubling combination of violence, conflicting witness statements, and unanswered questions. Despite the available evidence, the circumstances surrounding Miss Lawless's death remain difficult to fully piece together. An arrest and conviction were eventually made in the Lawless case. On February 17, 1994, 17-year-old Joshua Keiser received a 60-year prison sentence for second-degree murder. Although he had originally been charged with first-degree murder, the jury ultimately decided that the lesser charge was more appropriate. Despite the conviction, Rick Walter, a part-time deputy and one of the first officers to respond to the crime scene, remained uneasy about the outcome. In 2005, Walter became the elected sheriff of Scott County. where Benton serves as the county seat. The following year, he took the unusual steps of reopening the investigation, something rarely done within law enforcement unless pushed by defense attorneys or outside advocates. As the case was re-examined, major problems with both the investigation and the trial became apparent. Earlier accounts had mentioned witness Mark Abbott, who claimed he saw 3 or 4 men in a white car near the crime scene, describing the driver as either a dark-skinned Hispanic man or a black man. Yet Abbott later identified Joshua Keiser as the driver. This raised immediate questions since Keiser clearly did not match that description. The only detail connecting Keiser to Abbott's account was that he owned a white vehicle. Beyond that, there was no physical evidence placing him at the scene. Investigators found no DNA, fingerprints, blood evidence, or eyewitness testimony linking him to the murder, nor was any motive ever established. Police also focused on a jacket belonging to Keiser that allegedly contained blood. At the time, authorities claimed testing confirmed it was blood from Michelle Lawless. Years later, however, new testing revealed the stain was actually food residue, reportedly tomato juice, rather than blood. Adding further doubt was a witness statement placing Keiser roughly 350 miles away in Kankakee, Illinois, around the time of the murder on November 7th through the 8th in 1992.
Hold up, where in Illinois?
Kankakee.
Where's that at?
I think it's north of Chicago.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
Can you believe that they tried to say that the tomato juice on his jacket was blood and use that as evidence?
Isn't that ridiculous? Freaking tomato juice.
They definitely pinned him in a corner during his trial and just brought up bullcrap evidence.
In basketball, that would be called a reach-in. It's a reach-in foul. You are reaching for something that is not there. You are making something up.
Even with the weak physical evidence, Keiser was convicted largely because of testimony from 3 jailhouse informants who claimed he had confessed to the crime while awaiting trial. Over time, it was revealed that all 3 had provided false testimony. Cases relying heavily on prisoner informants have often led to wrongful convictions, particularly when inmates receive incentives in exchange for cooperating with prosecutors. Another controversial element involved testimony from Chantel Kreider, who stated at the trial that she had seen Keiser arguing with Lawless at a Halloween party a week before the murder. Her testimony implied the two knew each other, despite Keiser consistently denying any connection to Lawless. Further undermining her account, the host of the Halloween party later testified that she knew everyone present that evening and that Keiser had never attended. Some reports suggested another man, possibly Tom Mayberry, may have been involved in the argument instead, though no definite identification was ever made.
Man, we're going to find this very often, and you guys are going to hear a lot of it in a lot of other cases, but eyewitness testimony, it is so shaky at its core. You just can't trust what people think they see. And it happens in a million cases where someone will swear up and down they saw so-and-so do such and such, and then years later, they're like, actually, I don't know if that was who I thought did it. And that's exactly what's happening right now.
Following his conviction, Keiser was sent to the Missouri State Prison in Jefferson City, Missouri. It was the primary maximum security prison at the time. The facility, infamous for its violent reputation and known as the bloodiest 47 acres in America, housed many of the state's most dangerous inmates, including death row prisoners. One of its most notable former inmates was James Earl Ray, convicted of assassinating Martin Luther King Jr. in 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee.
I wonder if he was in the Missouri prison for that, or if he was in the Missouri prison for some other crime he committed beforehand.
I think that he was actually in that prison and he got out or escaped, and then he linked up with somebody. It's like an inside job pretty well to assassinate Martin Luther King Jr. There's a whole story behind it. Maybe we cover it one day, but I've seen a huge conspiracy about it.
Yeah, if you guys like those tinfoil tales like I do, you put your tin hat on real quick and go down the rabbit trail. There's a lot of stuff with some assassinations like MLK and JFK and a million other people. But yeah, I think there's some more behind that, like you said. Definitely an inside job.
I think that it would be frowned upon if I covered JFK because there's a wild conspiracy that ties to kind of current events that we have going on today.
Yeah. I think that'd be one we might just keep in our back pocket. Maybe just keep it in the chamber.
So the prison permanently closed on September 15, 2014 after a newer maximum security facility opened in Jefferson City. Its reputation was often compared to notorious prisons elsewhere, including the United Kingdom's Wakefield prison, sometimes referred to as Monster Mansion, because of the high-profile criminals it housed over the years. Critics of the original investigation have argued that both Sheriff Bill Farrell and Deputy Brenda Schwitz failed in their handling of the case, contributing to the wrongful conviction of a teenager. While Keiser reportedly had a troubled youth that included minor criminal activity and possible gang associations, supporters maintained that none of this justified treating him as a murderer without reliable evidence, which I 100% agree with.
Yeah, me too.
Further questions emerged when Rick Walter reportedly discovered notes written by Sheriff Farrell suggesting he privately doubted Keiser's involvement, despite aggressively pursuing the case in court. Because of the flaws in the investigation and prosecution, many believe the real killer of Michelle Lawless remained free for decades. After serving 16 years in prison, Keiser was eventually exonerated. He later filed a lawsuit against Scott County and others involved in the case, reportedly receiving $4 million in the settlement. According to reports, he donated $10,000 from that settlement towards efforts to identify Lawless's actual killer. In a 44-page ruling connected to the case, a judge wrote, quote, Keiser was betrayed by almost every level of the judicial process, end quote, a statement widely viewed as a severe condemnation of how the case had been handled.
You want to know what the real true crime is, Hunter?
What's that, Jacob?
When you spend all of that hard-earned money that you spent all week long working for on freaking kids' clothes of all things, and then suddenly, just weeks or months later, none of it fits anymore.
Yeah, or they wear an outfit like twice, maybe. Then it just sits in a tote or a drawer somewhere in your house for the next 4 years.
Exactly. And so that's why today we're partnering with Harris & Company Kids Consignment, which is a local children's consignment boutique where parents can actually make money back on all those clothes, shoes, toys, and baby items that their kids just outgrew.
And honestly, as the crime daddies, we support anything that helps moms and dads survive raising tiny humans because kids are expensive. Trust me.
Heard that. The cool part is you don't have to do all that annoying work either. Like you can just come in, bring them your items, they will sort it, they will list it, they will sell it, and you will earn commission. That's right. You will make money whenever your stuff sells.
And if you're shopping instead of consigning, you can get boutique-style kids' clothes without paying boutique prices, which in this economy feels like a crime to not mention to you.
And they even have online sales going right now as we speak, and eventually they're going to have a storefront coming. And so if you want to go ahead and check them out on Facebook, go ahead and search up Harris & Company Kids Consignment, or you can go and visit their website at harriscochild.com. Make sure you support local families, support local businesses, and tell them that the Crime Daddy sent you.
All right, now let's get back into some true crime. There are numerous aspects of the crime and the surrounding evidence that deserve much closer examination. When investigators study a homicide, they often begin by analyzing the offender's MO. This process centers around a series of basic but critical questions: who, what, when, where, how, and why. Solving those questions can lead investigators toward the truth, though, in practice, that is rarely straightforward. In this case, many of those questions appear partially answered, but uncertainty remains surrounding both the motive and the exact circumstances of the crime. Investigators also consider several additional factors connected to an offender's behavior, including the location of the crime, whether restraints were used, the presence and type of weapon involved, any efforts made to avoid detection, and whether the victim was transported.
Sure.
The crime scene itself raises several important points. The attack occurred near a northbound interstate exit ramp in a relatively isolated and poorly lit area. No restraints were officially reported, though the circumstances leave room for debate on that issue. Evidence suggests multiple forms of violence may have been used, including blunt force trauma and a .380 caliber semi-automatic handgun. There is little indication that the offender took major precautions to conceal evidence, although the lack of foreign fingerprints could suggest the use of gloves or that parts of the scene were wiped clean. Reports also indicate that substantial amounts of DNA evidence were recovered. There is no clear evidence that the victim was transported from another location before the assault. The level of violence involved appears especially personal. The injuries inflicted on Michelle Lawless suggest rage and intensity rather than a random encounter. For that reason, I find it difficult to believe that this was simply a spontaneous attack by a stranger. She was less than half a mile from both her home and the local sheriff's office. Rather than fleeing, she apparently pulled over voluntarily, which may indicate she recognized whoever approached her.
Mm-hmm.
The partially lowered driver's side window also suggests she did not initially perceive an immediate threat. The murder itself does not resemble an accidental killing or a confrontation that escalated unexpectedly. Instead, the attack feels deliberate and calculated. The fatal gunshots to the face may have symbolized more than simply ensuring death. They could indicate anger, punishment, or even an attempt to destroy identity. Whoever committed the crime seemed intent on making certain the victim would not survive. One particularly puzzling aspect of the case involves the sequence of events. Evidence suggests Lawless was first assaulted down an embankment where she suffered severe blunt force injuries. If the attacker intended only to kill her, additional blows could likely have accomplished that. Instead, she was reportedly carried or dragged back to the slope, placed inside of her vehicle, and then shot. The decision to move her body raises questions. Is it possible the killers wanted her discovered quickly, perhaps indicating some degree of remorse or familiarity with the victim? Another possibility is that the firearm was not immediately accessible during the initial assault and had to be retrieved from another vehicle.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
There's also the question of whether the blunt force injuries themselves may have been caused by the handle or butt of the firearm. Even so, the reason for returning her to the car remains unclear. Another important issue is whether more than one offender was involved. Personally, I doubt a single individual acted alone. Moving an unconscious body up an incline over a guardrail would have been physically difficult, even though Lawless weighed only around 95 pounds.
Yeah, but that's 95 pounds of
Dead weight.
Literally, like, no help at all. It's just, so that's got to be hard for anybody.
Right. An unconscious person becomes awkward and far heavier to maneuver. Blood droplets reportedly found near the front of the vehicle may support the idea that she was carried. Additionally, Lawless reportedly held a green belt in martial arts and was known to be confrontational when necessary. If only one attacker had been present, there might have been more obvious signs of defense resistance. Multiple attackers would have made it easier to overpower her, and a second person could effectively have acted as a restraint, even without physical bindings.
Does it ever mention if she has defensive wounds on herself that it looks like she tried to fight back, or does it just talk about the wounds she has from the trauma and the gunshots and stuff?
It mainly just talks about the blunt force trauma and the gunshot wounds.
You said a green belt in martial arts. You'd think if it's one person, she would try to put up some resistance, and then whenever that happens, she's going to get some defensive wounds on herself from that. But
Yeah.
If it's two people, then I'm sure they could subdue a 95-pound woman pretty easily if it's just two grown men.
Right. I mean, I could probably carry 95 pounds up a hill myself, but I truly believe two people were involved. Another critical question concerns who knew Lawless would be traveling along Interstate 55 at that particular time of the night. Given the timing and route involved, it seems possible the offender had prior knowledge of her movements. The statement given by witness Mark Abbott is another controversial part of the case. In my opinion, there are significant inconsistencies in his account. Abbott stated that he approached the parked vehicle, found a young woman slumped inside, and leaned through the window to lift her body. However, photographs of the crime scene and the positioning of the victim make that account difficult to reconcile physically, particularly given that the driver's side window reportedly was not fully open. In another version of events, Abbott described grabbing her by the shoulders rather than the waist, creating additional inconsistencies. Questions also arise regarding the absence of blood on Abbott, despite his claim of physically handling the victim. Investigators reportedly noticed no visible blood on him when he later spoke with the police. Officers at the scene also stated the window was only partially lowered, which complicates Abbott's description of reaching inside the vehicle. If he did open a door or altered the position of the window, that detail does not appear clearly documented.
Yeah, that's the part that sucks about this case, is that it happens back in 1992, where a lot of forensics were just kind of starting to finally take off. Nowadays, if you've been involved with anything, even if he's saying he just found her, they would test him immediately for gunshot residue on his hands, and they would be doing, those UV tests to see if they see any bodily fluid on him at all. Back then, it's just like, oh, I don't see any blood on the surface level, and then he's able to walk away. But you'd think if he's manhandling a deceased body, he's going to get something on him.
Today, touch DNA would have solved this case.
DNA today would have this case solved within a far shorter span than what's been going on so far.
I mean, DNA was involved in this case, but it's kind of explained away why it was there. But
Yeah.
if they would have had the touch DNA to get anything off of her body that if somebody would have handled her, I definitely think it could have been solved a lot faster.
Yeah, I mean, it's expanded so much within the past 30 years. Like I said, the early 90s, late 80s is whenever it first started to kind of pick up and get some traction. And so, even knowing what we know now, if we had that same information available and that same technology available, I can't help but wonder if this case would go different.
I 100% think it would.
Yeah.
So, lighting conditions present is another problem with Abbott's testimony. The area was reportedly extremely dark, requiring responding deputies to use flashlights and vehicle headlights to examine the scene. Yet Abbott claimed he immediately suspected the victim had been shot and also described seeing several men in a white car driving by, identifying them as either Hispanic or black. Without a reliable light source, those observations become difficult to explain. His statements also differ in whether he saw the white vehicle while near the crime scene itself or later while using a payphone.
Even that's kind of different because nowadays every road, especially if it's on an interstate or highway, it's all lit up. You're not going to find a dark stretch.
Yeah, in today's society, everything's so advanced, especially with CCTV footage.
Yeah.
I mean, it's extremely hard to get away with a crime now.
And for him to say in the dark he thought he saw someone who was Hispanic or black or something, I mean, it's just generalizing. It's dark outside.
It's the typical old excuse. Just blame it on the minority.
Yeah, exactly.
Another issue concerns his actions after discovering the vehicle. Rather than waiting nearby, Abbott reportedly drove to Benton to notify authorities and later returned to the scene. That sequence of events has led some to question why someone who believed he had discovered a homicide victim would leave and then double back. Because a lot of people that commit crimes will double back to see what's going on.
Yeah, that reminds me of that the Idaho murder case. If you guys have heard it, it's probably one of the biggest things that have happened in the past few years in true crime. But I watched a documentary just last week, and they talked about how they caught him because his cell phone had pinged there when he did the crime, and then like hours later, he came back and drove past the same neighborhood, and they caught him on like Ring doorbells, his car driving by, and his cell phone pinging because he wanted to drive by and see if anyone saw what he did yet.
There is also the matter of risk. According to Abbott's account, the alleged killers remained nearby while he approached the victim's car and potentially could have identified them. If the offenders had just committed a brutal murder in an isolated area, it seems unlikely they would linger long enough to expose themselves to another witness. Aerial photographs and modern satellite images of this area reveal another important point. Present-day streetlights appear in locations that may not have been illuminated in 1992. Testimony from responding officers indicates flashlights and emergency vehicle lighting were necessary to navigate the scene, reinforcing the idea that visibility at the time was extremely limited. See, Jacob, they did add streetlights.
Yeah, they did. I mean, that's just what you see everywhere. Maybe it's because cases like this happened where, and unfortunately, that's what it takes. It takes sad things to happen before people get their shit straight, and they're like, maybe we should do these things. Most of the time, especially in Southeast Missouri, we are reactive instead of proactive.
Years later, Detective William Bonnert reportedly stated that Abbott gave him a different account entirely. According to Bonnert, Abbott claimed he had witnessed a married acquaintance, Kevin Williams, kill Lawless because of an affair and alleged pregnancy. However, the autopsy determined that Lawless was not pregnant, casting doubt on that version as well. Bonnert himself reportedly specialized in narcotics investigations and later helped prosecute Abbott and his identical twin brother in a methamphetamine trafficking case that resulted in a lengthy federal prison sentence. Leon Lamb, Lawless's boyfriend, is another figure whose statements have drawn scrutiny. Her diary entries reportedly portrayed their relationship as intense and emotional, though some passages suggest jealousy and dishonesty within their relationship. Lamb's timeline of events on that night of the murder raises several questions. While he appeared uncertain about when Lawless arrived at his home or how long she had stayed, he was reportedly very precise about the exact time she left. Travel times create difficulties for his account. The drive from Sikeston to Interstate 55 exit near Benton takes approximately 20 to 25 minutes. Based on reports from responding deputies and witness timelines, Lawless is believed to have been killed roughly somewhere between 1 a.m. and 1:20 a.m. Considering the sequence of the assault, the beating, movement of the body, placement inside the car, and gunshots, the attack likely required more than just a few minutes. Estimating conservatively, the offenders may have arrived at the scene around 12:55 a.m. or earlier.
That blows my mind that there's only a 20-minute span where this could happen and nobody witnessed it happening. Because you think nowadays you're not going to find a spot on an exit or near a highway where there's 20 minutes of someone not being there, driving past, going down that same exit, whatever.
We got to think, it's the exit to get into Benton, Missouri, and Benton is such a small town that being around midnight, 1 a.m., it's not going to be very busy.
Yeah, I get it.
Witnesses reportedly placed Lawless and Sykes earlier that evening with friends, including male companions. According to some accounts, Lamb became upset after seeing her there. Lamb later stated that Lawless came to his home around 11:30 p.m., stayed for about an hour, and left at approximately 1 a.m. However, those times appeared difficult to reconcile with the estimated timeline of the murder and her known movements that evening. Another witness reportedly stated that Lawless dropped off a friend around midnight, which would have made it nearly impossible for her to arrive at Lamb's home as early as he claimed and still reach the crime scene by the estimated time of death. Perhaps most significantly, forensics testing later identified DNA beneath Lawless's fingernails as belonging to Leon Lamb's, a detail that inevitably raised additional questions about his role and the accuracy of his statements. However, Leon says his DNA was under her fingernails because they had passionate sex and she scratched his back during the sex.
I could see it happening. I definitely could see it happening.
Yeah, I mean, I do too. Everybody, sometimes it gets wild in the sheets.
Yeah, you get hot and heavy and then you start to dig and scratch. And so it would explain it. I'm just being honest.
And if she had just left his house and, we don't know if she washed her hands, but even if you wash your hands, you really got to scrub under your fingernails to get DNA out.
Yeah, DNA out. You have, cells, DNA, sweat particles, all these things that build up debris from skin. It sticks. Even if you do wash your hands, it's going to be there.
So no matter what conclusions people draw about this case, one fact is undeniable. Michelle Lawless did not deserve the violent fate she suffered. Her death was brutal, deeply aggressive, and seemingly fueled by intense anger. It is difficult to even imagine the fear she must have experienced in her final moments. She was only 19 years old when her life was taken, and the reasons behind the crime remain uncertain decades later. Had she lived, she would now be in her mid-50s, perhaps with a family, a career, and a future filled with possibilities. Instead, her loved ones lost a chance to share in the many years she should have had ahead of her. The milestones, relationships, and memories that vanished on November 8, 1992. At the center of this mystery is one question that still has not been fully answered. Why was Michelle Lawless killed? Understanding the motive could unlock the entire case. From what is publicly known, there appears to be no obvious reason she would have been targeted in such a vicious manner.
Yeah.
Rumors have circulated over the years, but speculation alone cannot solve a homicide. Only verifiable evidence can do that. One theory that has persisted involves Mark and Matt Abbott and their alleged involvement in drug activity within the area. Some have suggested that Lawless may have known something damaging about their operations. To examine that possibility, it becomes important to revisit Mark Abbott's original statement claiming he did not know the victim. Personally, that claim is difficult to accept completely. Entries from Lawless's diary reportedly mention the Abbott brothers more than once, and she is said to have described them as attractive to both her diary and close friends. If she recognized them, it is entirely possible they knew who she was as well. Demographics and geography also make total unfamiliarity seem less likely. At the time, the combined populations of Benton, Sykes, Scott City, and Cape Girardeau totaled just over 57,000 people. The number of residents between the ages of 18 and 25 was relatively small by comparison. Lawless spent considerable time in Sykes with friends, while her boyfriend Leon Lamb also lived nearby. Mark Abbott reportedly frequented local nightclubs in the same area. Considering the relatively small social circles involved, it becomes increasingly difficult to believe their paths never crossed.
I wonder by nightclubs if they're meaning like in Cape, because I don't know of any nightclubs in Sykeston. But again, it was the 90s, so I'm sure there's some stuff that happened back then that might have went away by now.
Yeah, I'm not sure. If you're listening and you know of any nightclubs there used to be in Sykeston, Scott City, or Cape Girardeau, please comment on this episode.
Yeah, because we're some young bucks. You guys probably already know that, because sometimes we don't know some stuff that you guys do know. Like, for example, in our first episode, we talked about not knowing who Mel Tillis and these other guys were. I've had my coworkers come up to me and say, you don't know who such and such is? And I'm like, you have to remember, I'm 24. My co-host is 30.
Another detail from Abbott's statements has raised questions. He reportedly commented that Lawless was not wearing rings when he examined her inside the car. For many observers, that is an unusual observation to make immediately after discovering what appeared to be a murder victim. Abbott also claimed he had noticed blood in her hair and suspected she had been shot. Yet, if the area was as dark as investigators described, it is unclear how he could have noticed details such as missing jewelry. Critics of his account have pointed out that only someone familiar with her habits might think to mention that she usually wore multiple rings.
True, I didn't even think about that. You have to know the person to know that what they tend to wear on their body.
Yeah, and it's the 90s, so a lot of women back then were wearing lots of gold jewelry.
Yeah, they have 10 rings on. They have like those little golden bracelets and stuff. And like my aunt, who is like a full 80s and 90s chick, to this day still goes all out with her rings and her bracelets.
And the gold hoop earrings.
I'm telling you, dude. And then you have like your cigarettes packed in like this little tin thing as well. If you're someone from the 80s or 90s, you understand rings and hoops and everything was just your go-to.
The Abbott brothers' alleged drug connections also intersect geographically with Lawless's life. Mark Abbott reportedly conducted drug activity in several nearby towns, including Cape Girardeau and Scott City. Scott City is particularly notable because the nursing program Lawless attended was located there. In my opinion, these overlapping social circles make it highly plausible that the Abbott brothers and Lawless knew each other to some extent. Another individual who has drawn attention is Richard Clay, an associate of the Abbott brothers who was later convicted of murder. Clay was sentenced to death for a contract killing before his sentence was commuted to life imprisonment without parole. Court records from that case reveal similarities that some believe could connect the crimes. In the 1994 murder of Randy Martindale, the victim was killed with a .380 caliber handgun, the same caliber believed to have been used in a Lawless homicide. Testimony from Clay's case indicated that a .380 Bersa handgun linked to another individual had disappeared and was never recovered. Notably, the murder weapon in the Lawless case has also never been found. This coincidence becomes even more intriguing when viewed alongside reports that Mark Abbott appeared to be searching for something near a trailer lot close to the murder scene on the morning Lawless was killed. Witnesses described his behavior as unusual, though the exact timing remains unclear. When all of Abbott's reported actions that morning are examined together, many aspects seem difficult to reconcile logically. The timeline itself continues to raise questions. Based on witness accounts, the first couple who discovered Lawless's vehicle likely encountered it shortly after 1:10 a.m. Abbott later claimed that in a very short span of time, he approached the car, leaned inside, examined the victim, attempted to use a payphone, spoke with another individual nearby, and then drove to the sheriff's office. Critics argue that fitting all of those actions into the available timeline is extremely difficult. There are also discrepancies regarding whether other witnesses even saw him at the scene during that period. Some individuals connected to the sheriff's office later reportedly questioned whether it was actually Mark Abbott who came to report the crime that morning or his identical twin brother Matt Abbott. The brothers were well known to local authorities because of prior legal trouble and alleged methamphetamine activity. Experienced officers familiar with the identical twins can often distinguish between them more easily than the general public. This has led to speculation that the brothers may have confused elements of their accounts over time, contributing to inconsistencies in their statements. Another theory suggests that one brother may have gone to the sheriff's office while the other remained closer to the crime scene. Supporters of that idea point to reports that Abbott had been searching near the trailer lot, possibly looking for the missing murder weapon. If true, some theorize Lawless may have possessed information about drug activity involving the Abbott brothers and their associates, potentially giving someone a motive to silence her. Other theories surrounding the murder exist, though many fail to align with the known timeline or evidence. Some appear highly speculative and verge on conspiracy rather than evidence-based analysis. Still, certain witness statements continue to attract attention. For example, two Missouri residents reportedly claimed they overheard Abbott and an acquaintance bragging about the murder sometime after Joshua Keiser's conviction. While such claims are difficult to verify, they have contributed to ongoing suspicion. Leon Lamb also remains a controversial figure in discussions about the case. Personally, I do not believe the available timeline fully supports his version of events. Reports indicate Lawless dropped off a friend around midnight and was later found near the interstate exit shortly after 1 a.m. That leaves very little time for the extended visit Lamb described. While I do not necessarily believe he was physically present at the murder scene or directly responsible for the shooting, I do believe he may possess information relevant to the investigation. The possible connection to Richard Clay could potentially be explored further through ballistics testing. If bullets from the Lawless case could be compared with evidence recovered in the Martindale murder, investigators might determine whether the same weapon was involved. Such a finding could strengthen links between Clay, the Abbott brothers, and others connected to the case. Whether law enforcement has already pursued this avenue is unknown. DNA evidence remains one of the most significant, unresolved aspects of the investigation. Former Sheriff Rick Walter reportedly arranged for specialized forensics testing in the Netherlands on evidence that could not be fully analyzed in the United States. Public details regarding those tests are limited, though reports suggest multiple significant DNA profiles were identified. One complication involves the Abbott twins themselves, since identical twins share extremely similar DNA profiles, making differentiation difficult through traditional testing methods. Questions also remain about DNA recovered beneath Lawless's fingernails. Reports from the Missouri State Highway Patrol Crime Lab indicated the biological material was consistent with Leon Lamb's DNA profile. Some investigators have wondered whether the DNA was present before the attack or whether it may have resulted from defensive scratchings during the attack itself. Additional questions linger regarding whether DNA profiles linked to Richard Clay or Kevin Williams were ever identified. Kevin Williams has also attracted scrutiny because of conflicting statements about his whereabouts on the night of the murder. His former wife initially provided him with an alibi, but later changed her account after the couple had separated. Witness descriptions of a slender man near the victim's vehicle reportedly align more consistently with the appearance of the Abbott brothers or Williams than Richard Clay. Still, some have speculated that Clay may have supplied the murder weapon without being physically present at the scene. What makes the case particularly striking is that nearly all of the individuals discussed were reportedly in the same general area on the night of the murder. Mark Abbott and Kevin Williams were allegedly seen at a nightclub in Sikeston with two women. Leon Lamb lived nearby. Richard Clay was in the broader southeast Missouri region. Lawless herself spent the evening in Sikeston with friends. Witnesses also reported seeing a light-colored pickup truck near the interstate exit, similar to one Mark Abbott admitted driving at the time. Ultimately, the central question remains unchanged. Who knew Michelle Lawless would be traveling along Interstate 55 that night? The answer may lie among the very individuals whose names continue to surface throughout the investigation. There are several people I personally believe warrant continued investigation attention. Mark Abbott, Matt Abbott, Leon Lamb, Richard Clay, and Kevin Williams. Whether future evidence will ever conclusively link any of them to the murder remains uncertain. What is certain, however, is that Michelle Lawless deserves justice, and after all these years, many still hope the truth about what happened on November 8, 1992 will eventually come to light. Josh Keiser himself does not believe that Leon Lamb is guilty. He believes that the state is about to convict another innocent man. Based on his public statements and social media posts, Josh Keiser has indicated that he believes Mark Abbott was involved in the 1992 murder of Michelle Lawless. Keiser has pointed to evidence, including DNA, that he says connects Abbott to the crime scene, and he has expressed concerns that law enforcement has overlooked other suspects. As of late 2024, Leon Lamb was charged with the murder, but the involvement of the Abbotts and Williams has been a long-running focal point in the investigation. Now, at this time, Leon Lamb is out on bond and has been granted a change of venue. His trial has been set to start February 22, 2027. Okay, everybody, that is the case of Michelle Lawless, and as you know, this case is still ongoing. Who knows if it's ever going to be completely solved and all the truth will ever come out? But covering this really made me nervous because there is so much more speculation of the suspects and Michelle, along with Scott County, that I didn't feel like I had the right to get into. You can listen to the Lawless Files podcast hosted by Bob Miller or read The Murder of Angela Michelle Lawless, An Honest Sheriff and the Exoneration of an Innocent Man by Stephen R. Snodgrass and Joshua C. Keiser, available on Amazon and online at Barnes & Noble. And the reason I don't want to get into all the conspiracy of Scott County and everything else is because, just like many of you listening, I live in this area. So I don't want to publicly announce my true opinion on the matter because I'm in Scott County every single day through the week.
Yeah, I mean, we have to look out for ourselves, and sometimes our opinions are just that. They're our opinions, but we also know whenever cases like this come with a lot of feelings and a lot of real things that people still attach to it. So just to be on the safe side of everything, we just wanted to keep a lot of our opinions out. I mean, on this particular case, this is one of the few times I actually know the case beforehand because, like Hunter said, it's probably the most prolific case in this area ever.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff I mentioned above throughout the episode is factual, but some of it is my speculation. So just to cover my butt, this is just a podcast. This is not what's true. This is our opinions on the matter. And your crime daddies do this podcast for free. We're not making any money off this. So we're not going to blast people because we cannot afford to be sued.
Yeah, we just do this because one, it's a hobby and we're best friends, and so it's just another reason to hang out. And then two, it's something that we are interested in, and we see a lot of this stuff not get talked about. It happens and then it gets blown over pretty quick. And so we just wanted to talk about some of these stories.
So if you want to listen to a lot of the conspiracy side of this case, go listen to the Lawless Files hosted by Bob Miller because he goes into a lot of detail, like a lot of detail about Scott County.
Yeah, and if you want to go look up anything about this case, there's so much more information that we just couldn't pack into an episode, or else we'd be sitting here for 2 to 3 hours. And so he actually stretches it over the course of how many episodes?
I believe it's 10.
Yeah, so 10 full-length episodes. And so if you want a deep dive on this case, then go listen to that podcast. They do a pretty good job of covering it. We just wanted to give you guys kind of the Cliff Notes version for you guys to hear the case, and then hopefully from there you go and research more yourselves. But yeah, I mean, this is one of the few times that, like I said, that I'll actually know the case beforehand, just because it's been so big. As you guys know, for the most part, we tell each other crime stories and cases every week, and we go back and forth. And the premise is the other person doesn't know until the day of, so they can get real raw reactions. And there's even a lot of stuff that Hunter told me today that I had either not known or just forgot because it's been going on for so long. I mean, everyone in this area that's been around for some time knows about it. Would you say?
Oh, absolutely. Like, you talk about true crime cases at a CMO, I can guarantee 100% of the time, Michelle Lawless will be brought up.
Yeah, like we said at the very beginning of the episode, we had a lot of people suggesting this. Like, as soon as we dropped our first episode, one of the first comments we ever got in our DMs was, "Hey, look into this case," right? And so it's been pretty big from day one. And like Hunter said, he's been pretty apprehensive to do it just because it is really big. And whenever you have really big cases, there's a lot of big ideas and big thoughts that come with them. And so we just wanted to make sure if we did do it, we did it in the way that your crime daddies do it. We're not journalists. We're not investigators. We're not police officers. We're just two dads with microphones that we got online. So give us some grace whenever it comes to some of the things we talk about.
And at the end of the day, what happened to Michelle is such a tragedy. And I think that we should all remember her and her loved ones and her family. And she was just a beautiful young lady with lots of life left ahead of her. And she just did not deserve what happened to her. So rest in peace, Michelle.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's all about bringing justice to her. And so it's not about us sitting here and conspiracizing about what could have happened, when what really matters is whatever happens comes to light, and whoever did it to her gets the justice that her case deserves, right? And so that's why we just bring it up. We tell you guys the facts about it, and we do it because if you look at it from a case standpoint, it's technically unsolved. Ever since Keiser got out of prison, they don't really have anything until next year's court date with Leon Lamb. So as of right now, it's unsolved, and it's going on 30 plus years of being unsolved, 34. So it'll be 35 years by the time Leon's going to court for it. So it's unsolved, and so we just want to make sure we put out some information, and hopefully one day her life will see some justice at the end of it. All right, that's it for this episode, Hunter. I appreciate you bringing it to us this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope I did this case justice, and I hope that everybody listening enjoyed the way I presented this case. And sorry if it sounds like me and Jacob may sound tired while we are recording this, because it is currently 2:42 in the morning, because your crime daddies are very busy guys. I work full time. I got a wife. I got kids. I got a home I got to take care of. I'm coaching T-ball for my son right now. I'm currently redoing a bunch of stuff to a truck I just bought. I'm rebuilding my deck on my house. So my schedule is packed so full right now. So we're always going to promise you all that we're going to drop every Tuesday, whether we got to stay up in the middle of the night to get these cases done.
Yeah, so you guys are who we do it for. And so if you guys can just return the love, it costs exactly $0.00 for you to pause right now and go and follow us on all social medias and interact. And you can find us on Facebook at Crime Daddies, Instagram at Crime Daddies Pod. You can find us on all podcast streaming platforms at Crime Daddies. And then you can also find our personal social medias. My Facebook is just Jacob Smith. The one that's from SEMO is probably me. There's another Jacob Smith from Charleston, but he's a buddy of mine. So even if you add him, he's a nice guy. But then you can find me on Instagram at Jacob W.C. Smith, and you can find me on TikTok at Jacob W.C. Smith as well. And Hunter, you can find him at?
You can find me on Facebook at Hunter Ben Frampton. You can find me on Instagram at hunter.semo. And you can also find me on TikTok at Hunter_Semo.
And just as a quick question for you guys to put in the comments, because I like doing these, I like getting responses. If you guys are going on a road trip and you stop at a gas station, what is your go-to snack and drink combo? For me, I'm probably going to get some beef jerky, something high protein, and maybe like an energy drink or a coffee. But I want to hear what you guys get, because even my fiance, she gets like sweet treats for the road, and I could never do it. But if you listen all the way through, go ahead and drop in the comments what's your go-to gas station snack. What's yours, Hunter?
Personally, my dynamic duo is Coke Zero and a protein bar.
Can't beat it, right? You can't beat it.
And please, everybody, leave us 5-star reviews. I can't tell you why it helps, but it does help us on the algorithm to get out there to a broader audience. We love our SEMO people, but we would also love to expand out there beyond SEMO.
Yeah, let's share the love. Let the people from around the world know what's coming, know what's happening down here in the Boot Heel of Missouri, right? So if you guys could do that, that'd be awesome. And so we're sorry for harping at you guys at the end of every episode, but it's just really important. And this is the one way you can support us without having to give us any money. And so if you can just do these things, like, comment, share, subscribe, post us on your story, set your reminders, and give us these reviews on our episodes and on the podcast on whatever platform you listen to. That's just all free stuff you do for us. And then we're going to bring you these podcasts, even if it's 3 a.m. in the morning, just because we love you guys and we appreciate it.
And we got a surprise next week, everybody, because Jacob's going to be bringing us a case from out of the country.
Out of the country. I'm talking all the way in Africa. So be on the lookout for that one. It's a pretty interesting one. I like to do some wild ones every once in a while. I like the SEMO ones, but sometimes there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens, and maybe we can get some listeners from this country to tune in as well.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, I think that's going to be it for the Michelle Lawless episode. Come back next week for a new episode. Peace.
Goodbye.